So it goes without saying that power cuts are likely going to affect South Africa for some time to come, with projections for, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years, coming from different sectors of the society and government. Eskom has been battling to stabilize its power generation units that have been breaking down continuously, leaving households and businesses reeling, rather. So what options are available to you, and how much will they cost you? Well, let's chat to Mr. Mohamed Madhi. He's an energy expert. Mr. Madhi, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Maybe let's start with this proposal of declaring a state of disaster to unlock funds so that we can deal with the energy crisis. Is it as easy as that?
I think clearly, one is to go through all the normal steps to be able to unlock those funds, but it is necessary to take some kind of action. Whether the, state of disaster is the way to go or not, I think there's some pros and cons. Overall, I think it is a good idea to go that route, but it shouldn't be the only route that we go. There's a few fundamental steps that government can take right now without even declaring a state of disaster or anything of that nature that will help unlock some of the bottlenecks we have in this country. I think there is a misidentification of what those bottlenecks are and a misunderstanding of how we can unlock those bottlenecks. So we need to get to those first. And if we do, we can do the state of disaster and everything else in parallel. And perhaps maybe just very quickly, the most immediate thing that government needs to do is to be able to allow private developers access to the grid quicker than they currently have it. That process, it's one process within Eskom, obviously a number of sub-processes, but one process within Eskom that is holding up the bringing onto the grid a large number of megawatts. And that's where the bottleneck lies. And, private sector and many other parties are willing to assist. But I think government fails to recognize that just by unlocking that particular process, we will go a long way to helping solve the country's crisis.
This invitation for the private sector to come to the table and possibly assist, what assessments have been done, especially when it comes to the government's mandate of providing that electricity for every single person? So we talk of the working class in South Africa. Just how affordable will that energy be? I mean, government always talks about leaving no one behind. Will certain people be left behind with the introduction or with the privatization partially of Eskom?
This is a question that's been around 25 years. And I can say that with certainty because back in the mid-90s, I was responsible for what was called the electrification program. And I used to be at Eskom, responsible for part of the capital program. So we had a target in those days of electrifying 300,000 homes per annum. And that target was put in place specifically to ensure that those that are underserved or those without electricity had access to electricity. And we've been, or Eskom has been delivering on those targets back then. Those targets have continued, that program has continued for many years, and we've been able to get to a high degree of electricity penetration. Still not enough, admittedly, in certain areas. So when, since back then, the idea was always, if you had independent power producers, or if you had what we were considering regional electricity distributors, REDs in those days, you would put a requirement on them to serve a certain section of the society, a certain part of the country, and through putting these requirements in, you meet the overall service coverage requirements. It's not the only thing that will happen. Eskom will still have certain responsibilities in that regard. But these are easily manageable, easily doable. These are not insurmountable obstacles that makes it impossible for the private sector to get involved. And if you look at these kinds of questions and these issues that are raised, as I said, they've been raised for 25 years, they've been answered for 25 years, but nothing's ever been done about it. Probably now time to do something about it and give the benefit of the doubt to those who say that they will in fact meet those targets. Because for 25 years we haven't been giving anyone the benefit of the doubt. And the net result is no action has been forthcoming.
Okay. Maybe let's take it further, right, and take a look at that access to electricity. And if you are looking to step away from the grid, be it partially or completely, let's start from the least expensive to the most expensive. If I have 5,000 Rand, what options are available to me?
The options available generally to users, households, small businesses, large businesses, very much depends on, firstly, their budget, as you rightly point out, but also what their load requirements are, how much space they have. Sometimes many people have the ambition of putting in place solar, but they don't have enough roof space. For those that are fortunate enough to have enough roof space, that is clear, that is not shaded, the absolute cheapest option is to put in solar panels. That does not take you off grid completely. That helps you for part of the your requirement, of course, when the sun is shining. But it's the first step. And it's the cheapest step. Solar right now is the cheapest form of energy for the general households, the general businesses, etc. If you're in a coastal area and there happens to be high wind in the area that you're in, then wind also plays a role. But across the country, in general, solar is the cheapest. The next option then is to figure out what do you do when the sun is not shining. Of course, you try and then store some of the sun that you don't use, some of the sun's energy that you don't use when the sun was shining. So you would look at battery energy storage systems. Unfortunately, battery energy storage is still fairly expensive. And because of that, it's not as affordable as solar panels are. The thing, though, that I think most people don't or haven't yet made the connection is to run a diesel generator is a lot more expensive than it is to put in place a battery energy storage system over the life of the system. So if you're able to afford a battery energy storage system and you have solar, running that system or getting power out of that system will be cheaper than running a diesel generator. And of course, a lot depends on the sizing, your space, etc. So we're just talking general principle for now. I think another misconception that is out there is that you need solar in order to have a battery energy storage solution. That's not necessarily true. You can have a battery energy storage solution even though you don't have solar on your roofs. So my recommendation to the public would be, if you can afford battery energy storage, put the battery energy storage systems in place. It's cheaper than running a generator, even if you're charging your batteries from the grid, when the grid is available. So those are the two immediate steps one can take. Of course, the diesel generator is always a backup, but as I said, that's a lot more expensive. So as basic starting point, those are the initial things that every individual should do. There are other initiatives that you can undertake without having to put in place new solar panels or battery system. And that would be making your home more efficient. So, understanding the different uses of energy in your home or in your business, what appliances, what machinery, what equipment is taking up most of the energy, scheduling it in a more effective way, and also upgrading some of that equipment to some of that, devices, some of the devices you have in your home to more energy efficient devices. And people often, again, some people do that as a second thought, but the modern devices, your modern cooling systems, your fridges, your ovens, your microwaves, etc., your air conditioners, are a lot more energy efficient than even 5 or 10 years ago. So investing in that to bring your energy requirement down and your bill down certainly makes a hell of a lot more sense.
Mr. Madhi, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Mohamed Madhi is an energy expert.